All right. So it's me again. Next speaker is going to be Shishir Mehrotra, who was leading engineering product design at YouTube before founding Coda. I met Shishir when I was starting to use Coda 3 or 4 years ago. If you know me, I'm a no-code nerd. I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of Notion, Airtable, Bubble, Zapier, so the bar was really high. And I was very impressed by Coda capabilities. I was very impressed by the product, but also all the features at the velocity at which you ship the features, and even how you communicate those features. Actually, my first interaction with you, Shishi, happened through an automation I built in Coda to reach out to you. And when I met you, I realized that a great product, great features, great communication, and all of this doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of a great team and great rituals. I'm constantly impressed by everyone I meet at Coda, from product managers to marketers to partnership to HR, and obviously engineers and engineering leaders. So today, Shishir, thank you for being here. You are going to let us know a bit more about what the best engineering leaders do differently. Thanks, Shishir. Mike is yours.
Thanks for the wonderful introduction. I remember well the first note I got from Quan was here's an email, and by the way, it was sent from Coda, and that definitely got my attention. And so I got pulled into the Plato ecosystem, and have been proud participant for a long time now. So today I'm going to talk about what the best engineering leaders do differently, and for people who are interested in following along, I'll put the link in the chat so people can go through it as well. I picked 3 topics for today. As Quan mentioned, I've led product engineering teams in lots of different places, Microsoft, Google, so on, and I've sort of picked up 3 primary things we're going to talk about. What I think of as great people, great decisions, and great rituals. So I'll jump in and talk, starting with people, and we'll just go through all 3 and see where they land. So I like to start here because I think that when you think about building a great engineering culture and team and so on, it all starts with the people. And this is a framework that we developed at Google that has really stuck with me. And it's a different way to think about evaluating what makes someone great. The little bit of history on this is when Larry Page took over as CEO of Google. Oops, let me get that back in place. When Larry Page took over as CEO of Google in 2012, he made a number of different changes. One of which was he turned everything back into business units. So up till then, everything reported directly into the CEO. And so all of a sudden, we had 8 business units around Google. We had YouTube and Chrome and so on. And so we had to then find different ways to coordinate on how we would evaluate people. And so there's a group formed to figure out how to evaluate product managers, to evaluate engineers, and so on. And I got to lead one of these groups of thinking about the level guide. Like what is the level guide for each of these different roles? And the first meeting we had on the topic was kind of hilarious. So I came in and we had sort of all these different people from the 8 different divisions. And I said, I took the level guide that we had and I cut it into little strips of paper, and basically cut off the, sorry, I can't see the text on the x-axis. Here, let me come back here. It doesn't matter much. I'll talk about it in a second. Took the level guides, cut in little strips of paper, cut off the name of each level and the number. And I did a reverse identification process. For all of you that have a level guide at your company, I highly recommend running this process. Take your levels and see if people can reverse identify which level that is. And at Google, they were somewhat hilarious because we'd been working on them for 14, 15 years. Things were always added but not removed. So they would say things like, this person can manage a medium-sized project, and they always submit interview feedback on time. And it was sort of stuff with everything we wanted to encourage the team to do was sort of built into this level guide. if you took these sheets of paper and you laid them out side by side, you could get an ordering. And the way you would get an ordering is something that roughly aligned to scope. And so the first meeting we had on this topic, we ended up coming up with this framework for describing scope. And said, here's how we're going to describe what's a small project, a medium project, so on. And we said we're going to describe it as this person manages a feature, a group of features, a sub area of product, multiple sub areas of product, a whole product, and a product line. We send everybody away. So that's good. At least we're now calibrated how we're going to think about this. Next meeting, we come back and everybody's really upset. Say, wait, that didn't work at all. And there are a few different reasons they're upset. Number one, they said is not well calibrated. Like what's a product is not clear. So, for example, Google.com, like the search engine, felt like one product, and yet the ads team had like 20 different products, so they could invent product for all sorts of different segments. And so this is unfair. Everybody's going to want to work on the ads team instead of the search team. The second observation was that this scope felt like an input, not an output. And so you'd say, here's this person that is managing a product sub area, and you say, yeah, but the manager gave them that responsibility. How do we promote them based on what they're covering? When giving them that ability that's what the manager did. Now they have to do something in that. And the third issue was our best people were working on things that were a little risky. And we weren't yet sure whether this thing was going to be a feature, was going to be a whole product or product line, or so on. So we ended up coming up with this other acronym to cover this axis. We call it PSHE. And I've tried many times over the years. To come up with a better acronym that forms a word, and I haven't been able to come up with one. So it's PUSH, and that is how it'll have to stand. And it stands for problem, solution, how, execution. And here's how it works. So early on in people's careers, they get handed a problem, they get handed a solution, they get handed the how. This is what you're supposed to do. Write this document, write this piece of code, talk to this person, try this integration test, whatever it might be, and your job is just to execute on it. Gradually you get handed a problem, a solution, and you have to figure out the how. You figure out the milestones, you figure out the ordering, you figure out the architecture, whatever it might be. At some point you get handed a problem and you have to figure out the solution. So we're going to, we have this problem, we are dealing with, a performance issue or an activation issue or whatever it might be, and you have to find the solution. And at some point you hand someone a space and they come back with the problems. This resonated much closer for people, and a few of the people went off and actually plotted their teams on both axes, and that came back with this black line, which I thought was really interesting, that if you were sort of curve fit everybody on people's teams, early in people's careers, they mostly grew in scope. They were mostly handed a problem, handed a solution, handed the how, and they mostly executed on bigger and bigger scopes. Later in people's careers were sort of similar. They were running large divisions or large products. So at that point, they were clearly operating at that P level and just scaling on bigger and bigger spaces. But in the middle, the axis seemed to change. And this circle here represents what I call the trough of disillusionment. This is the place where the employee, the way the employee is judged changes, and it causes them to view the world a little bit differently. And from the perspective of the manager, from the perspective of the promotion committee, it also changes, because now what we used to say is the difference between a level 3 and a level 7 may not be the job someone does, it's how they do the job. And this is a very different way to think about great people. So rather than think about people in terms of scope, I've started thinking about people in terms of this axis: problem, solution, how, execution. So I thought this was a really interesting topic. Number one, it's become the secret of how I find great people, manage great people, evaluate great people, and retain them. Okay, so second topic, and it sounds like from the chat that a couple people have heard this word before. For those of you that haven't, are going to learn all about this word called Eichen questions. And I'm going to tell this story through the lens of a particular problem that we face at YouTube, which I call the modern family question. And so when I joined YouTube in 2008, this was the number one question on our mind, which might seem crazy because in 2008, we were seen as Google's first failed acquisition. And we had lots of problems. We were losing lots of money. We were known for grainy videos. We had $1 billion lawsuit, lots of things going wrong. And yet, if you looked at our staff meetings every day, you'd probably see us talking about Modern Family. Modern Family at the time was one of the top 5 search queries on YouTube. There was one big problem. When you search for Modern Family on YouTube, you didn't get very good results because we didn't have Modern Family. It was the number one show on TV, but we didn't have it. Now, ABC.com had decided to put every episode of Modern Family up on their website, which nowadays probably doesn't seem that special, but in 2008, that was very uncommon. It was the number one show on TV being available for free to everybody just seemed a little bit crazy. So the team divided on how to think about this problem. And basically, half the company got very focused on the idea of what they call linking out. So when somebody searches for Modern Family, we should just link people off to abc.com. That's actually what the people want to get to. And the argument for it was fairly clear. We're now owned by Google. Google's job is to do right by the user. It's a search engine, where the world's second biggest search engine still is. We should just send people to where they want to go. The other half of the company got aligned in the opposite direction. This is the sales team, the content partnership team, the marketing team. They all said, if you start linking off to Modern Family, then we're never going to get the great content on YouTube. We're only going to have the stuff that doesn't deserve to live anywhere else. Deep, hard problem. Talked about it over and over again. Every staff meeting it would come up in one form or the other. And at some point, we decided to try to resolve this problem. We were going to have an offsite. We took everybody on the team, or everyone in the leadership team, and said, we're going to spend a whole day in Half Moon Bay, and we're going to decide once and for all, are we going to link out or not link out? What are we going to do with Modern Family? I was asked to prepare. The data for this. What are all the facts? How do we know all the different pieces of this decision, and try to make a call? Should we link out or not link out? And the night before the offsite, I happened to be reading a memo from a different team at Google, the Google shopping team. And they were in an all-out fight with Amazon and were losing quite badly. And they had just done a set of user research to try to understand why, because in their minds, this made no sense. That, why would anybody go to Amazon instead of Google Shopping when Google Shopping had indexed all of Amazon and everything else on the internet? Why would you ever pick the thing with less catalog? And the response they kept hearing back was that users said, I prefer to go to Amazon because it's a more consistent experience. And they would say things like, I understand how the prices work, the reviews work, I understand how shipping works, how return works. And yes, I know it's not everything that I could buy, but I'll prioritize consistency over comprehensiveness. So at this offsite, we decided to have our question, instead of being Modern Family, link it out or not, we said, we're going to answer a different question first. The question we're going to answer is the video market in 10 years more likely to be centered on consistency or comprehensiveness? And interestingly, that discussion realigned everybody. And all of a sudden, all the factions dissipated, and we had a real debate on which way the video market is going to head. And we decided that the video market was more likely to land on consistent over comprehensive. And by the way, we're now 15 years later, and I think that is roughly how it played out. If you look at the video market today, there's amazing video available online, but there's no one property that has all of it. So we made a decision. We're going to focus on consistency over comprehensiveness. And that therefore meant we weren't going to link out to Modern Family. We also changed a number of other decisions. So for example, we used to accept embed players, flash embed players on YouTube. We stopped doing that as well. Probably the most famous decision is that we took back control of the iPhone app for YouTube. When the iPhone came out, there was no app store. So Apple built the first application. And we went to them and they said, why do you want it back? And we said, well, it doesn't match what we're doing on the rest of the platform. Half the catalog wasn't playing back. And they said, you're going to give up default distribution. And I said, yes, but we'd rather have a consistent experience for less people than have a comprehensive experience for that is inconsistent. This idea of picking a different question became known as eigenquestions. And eigenquestions, for the math experts in the room, they'll know the source of this comes from linear algebra. An eigenvector is the most discriminating vector in a multidimensional space. If you don't know the math, it doesn't really matter. The word's made up. But for a simplistic definition, an eigenquestion is a question where, if answered, it likely answers the subsequent questions as well. It's a very powerful way to think about it. Rather than saying, do we have the right answer? You start with, do we have the right question? This has become a really important key to how we made decisions at YouTube. I carried it forward to Coda, and how we make decisions starts with, before we try to get to the right answer, try to get to the right question, or like we like to call it, the right eigenquestion. Okay, that's topic number 2. And I have one last one for you as we think about some patterns from great engineering leaders. And here I wanted to talk about a concept I call golden rituals, and talk in particular about culture. So this story starts with a fun conversation I had with an old friend, Bing Gordon, For people that don't know Bing, Bing was one of the founders of Electronic Arts. He's now a famous investor, Amazon, Zynga, and many other great companies. I happened to be on a board with Bing, and he used this line that I really liked. He said, every company has a small list of golden rituals. There are three criteria. Number one, they're named. Number two, every employee knows them by their first Friday. And number three, they're templated. He has lots of examples. He talks about Amazon has 6-pagers, Google has OKRs, Salesforce has V2MOM. And as he talked about it, I've found myself observing golden rituals everywhere I looked. I got really excited about this and actually decided to turn it into a project I'm doing. I've now interviewed over 1,000 different people to get to their golden rituals, and I'm turning it into a book. So the book is called Rituals of Great Teams. And by the way, if anybody's interested, I'm writing the book in the open. I'm publishing chapters a few at a time to a brain trust. So you can go to that link and you can sign up and read some early versions of it. But one of the most interesting things I've learned as I've interviewed thousands of people about their golden rituals is this phrase I heard back. Rituals are not just your team's operating system. They're a two-way mirror of company culture. One of my interviews was with Dharmesh Shah, the founder of HubSpot, and he sort of built on this concept and said, as a company, we build two things. We build a product for our customers, and we build a culture for our employees. And when you think about a culture, the way a culture is manifested tends to be through these golden rituals. So I selected a few here to talk about. I think I won't have time to talk about all of them, but I'll at least share the first one here. And I'll talk about Coda's golden ritual. And in particular, I'm going to talk about a concept we call two-way write-ups. Flip over here. I'll show you this fun comic. So if you were to ask any Codan on their first Friday what our golden ritual is, they would almost certainly talk about two-way write-ups, or something we sometimes shortened as called Dorian Pulse. Our head of product, Lane Shackleton, partnered up with a guy named Colin Breyer. Colin Breyer wrote a book called Working Backwards about how Amazon runs their meetings. And Colin also happened to be Jeff Bezos' chief of staff. So Colin and Lane worked together to come up with this wonderful graphic going through the history of how we think about write-ups and meetings. So the observation is that the way meetings run has sort of corresponded to different moments in history. In 1987, PowerPoint came out, and we were all subjected to 20 plus years of watching people present to us without really being able to get a response from what people were doing. In 2004, two things happened the same year, and it's kind of a surprising moment in history. 2004, Jeff Bezos wrote his really famous No More PowerPoints memo. Actually, turns out Colin Breyer is the one who wrote the memo. It's kind of fun. Fun aside, learning a little bit about how that happened. And in that same year, Google Docs came out under the name Writely at first. Total happenstance, they happened at the same time. But I saw an enormous number of companies say, oh, we're going to follow the Amazon model. We now have a write-up based culture. And this is positive in many ways. All of a sudden, people were forced to explain themselves in ways that slides could, sort of skip reasoning. But it also had some downsides. I had a really interesting conversation with one of the people I interviewed for the book who said it feels like the most important decisions in our company are made in the right 100 pixels of a Google Doc. That can't possibly be the best way to do it. So what's wrong with that way of running write-ups? Well, you have no sense of importance. Some of these comments are grammatical. Some of them are really important. I think this is a terrible idea is right next to I think you missed a semicolon. You have no idea who's actually read the thing. I'm sure everybody's gone through this experience of you send out this write-up and then you sit and watch the avatars at the top and you try to see did the people you care about actually read it or not. And probably most importantly, you don't really know what people think. They leave their comments and you have to kind of read between the lines on everything they're thinking. So we do something at Coda that I've now seen in a number of different companies where we call these two-way write-ups. A number of companies call these decision docs. And the model is fairly simple. We have a little button in the doc that says done reading. So as people go through it, they can acknowledge receipt. We do a thing called Pulse where everybody writes. And this is if you think about the one-way model as I'm going to hand you a document, you're going to put Post-its on it. In this case, people write and they say, I agree, I disagree, here's where I stand, and really explain yourself on why you feel that way. And then for the questions, we don't go in order of comments. We ask people to add questions to a table, and we vote them up and down. And, give you a quick example of what that feels like. Elaine did a nice job of including a real write-up from Coda. But this is one for a design document for moving the toolbar, which was a hard decision to make, to move the toolbar from up here to being in line. And this team did a nice job of incorporating. I'm gonna see where people have read it or not. And then at the bottom here, everybody goes and writes how they feel about the plan. We do one special thing, which is we hide everybody else's until you're done writing. So you're supposed to come in, put in your pulse check, write in what you think, and then you can toggle everybody else's and see where everybody stands. And then finally, we get the questions. We call this Dory. It's named after the fish who asked all the questions. Ex-Googlers in the group probably recognize the name as well. So this is our golden ritual. And I've included in the write-up here a few others that you can go look at. To give you a quick summary, Ariana Huffington told me about a ritual she does called Reset, which is all about how to take groups and make sure they de-stress and learn about each other. A very creative ritual. One of my favorite ones is the way that Jenny Emick told me about how Square runs one-on-ones. And a kind of different way to think about that toolkit. And the fourth example I included here is from Des Traynor, the founder of Intercom, who started with this really interesting insight that thinking about productivity and tools, your emails, what others think you should work on, your to-do list is what you think you should work on, your calendar is what is usually what you actually work on, how much they overlap. And he has a whole technique for increasing this overlap. And so I'll let you read those rituals on your own later. And if you'd like to see more, you can join into the Brain Trust and learn more about the book. But the bigger message I wanted to leave you with on this topic is, as a great engineering leader, you have to think about all three parts of this. You have to think about making sure you have great people, making sure you have a great decision-making process, and I think then the foundation of how do you make sure you have the right golden rituals for what you want your culture to emphasize. I think I'm right at time, so I will pause there. There's a few links in the chat, and look forward to hearing feedback and questions for anyone. I'm easy to find, Shishir Mehrotra on Twitter, and my name's fairly unique, so you can find me on just about every property as well. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the conference.